Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's live stream all about interviewing instructors for group fitness managers. So thank you for joining me now or joining me later for the recording. I have been playing with the volume of my microphone, so I'm going to check really quick that on Facebook it sounds okay, and then we will get started. This week, as a group fitness manager, I have a quick story to tell everyone because playing with the volume of my microphone, yeah, so I'm gonna sounds check good. Really quick. Cool. On Facebook. It's been quite a week. We, as most of you group fitness managers have experienced now in 2020/2021, we tried to make sure that we had outdoor resources for our participants, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest. We had about a foot of snow this past weekend, and we had the tent out still because we were continuing to do outdoor classes. This was kind of a surprise snowstorm. We got way more than we thought we would. Our engineering team did the best that they could to prevent the, inevitable from happening. And the snow became really heavy after the rain and collapsed our awesome outdoor tent. And we're trying to salvage the pieces, but the life of a group fitness manager and how much gratitude I have for the engineering department for trying to save it during this time. And now we've got to figure out what's next for that group. So feel free to leave a message in the comments if you're experiencing something similar right now. More and more opportunities to learn and develop during this time. But back on task. So if you don't know me, my name is Stacey Alden. I've been doing these videos to inspire and motivate and educate group fitness managers to lead their teams to the best of their ability and to really create a foundation, especially in going into 2021 and beyond, of how to create an amazing team, how to build an amazing group fitness team. And that's where we're in the earlier parts of 2021. We're going to talk about interviewing instructors. So quick recap of this series for February. We started this series with talking about the hiring process. So the hiring process I oversee a large team of group fitness instructors in the Seattle, Washington area, and they've done an amazing job during this pandemic time and even before in basically building amazing group fitness classes and working together. So I really attribute that ability to maintain such a great team based on the ability to have a great hiring process. So we talked about the hiring process last video. It starts with, of course, obtaining their resume. They apply to your facility, and then you want to take some time to obviously look through that information, get a feeling for how their resume looks, and hopefully it's attributed more to the fitness world rather than maybe they do have a separate job that they work full-time for. We want to see that they're committed to their role as a group fitness instructor, so much so that they see it as their career, not just a hobby. So their resume should reflect that. And then ask them, of course, for references if they don't provide those initially. Check on those references, get an idea of who these people are, and then give them a little bit of homework before interviewing them. So something I like to do is ask them to take a look at our schedule, take a look at what classes we offer, and to be prepared to speak to those classes and what they saw and what they learned about the schedule and the list of instructors. And maybe they take a moment to look at the group fitness bios to really give them an idea of what your team is all about. And then hopefully they can come in with some insight to that. So I ask them to do those few things. And then at that point, I do, depending on how things are looking, invite them in for an in-person interview. I know that is a challenge right now with the pandemic, but as long as your club is following safety protocols, I would hope that the instructor is able to come in person. There's something so valuable about meeting the instructor, the potential instructor, in person. And to have the ability to actually show them around the club is very valuable as well, in my opinion. So here's the interview. And then after the audition, the interview is the audition. After the audition, which we're going to go into a lot of detail in our next video, is sometimes a second interview. Most likely there will be a second interview and then potentially a second audition, depending on how that first audition goes, and then finishing with potentially some homework, which I almost always give potential instructor, which we'll talk about in future videos. But today is all about the interview. And the reason this hiring process is so incredibly important is, as much as we as group fitness managers can be determined to find an instructor for a class or to fill a hole in our schedule if something has changed suddenly, we have to really, prepare for that, which is a whole other video in itself, so that we aren't left scrambling, so that we aren't rushing through this process. And then second is to build the trust of your current team. Your current team wants to see that the people that you're bringing into the team are going to contribute to their success. They're going to be able to work with that person, and hopefully for the long term. And that's really why you want to take your time during this process. You don't want there to be a revolving door. You want those people to hang with you and hang with the team. So those are the two real important reasons to really take your time in this process. And another reason is to really think ahead to what your life is going to be with working with this person. How is it going to be while you're leading this person? So that's where really listening to your gut instincts is important, and it can be really hard to do. But let's talk about the interview itself. Before the interview, I have at this point looked at their resume, corresponded with them. I understand exactly what classes they're interested in teaching, what days and times they're available to teach or sub, and I've asked them to do a little homework before our interview, which I said earlier was looking at the schedule, looking at the website, looking at the list of instructors, getting a feeling of what the club offers, and showing that they're interested in becoming a part of that ecosystem. And then at that point, if I feel like I'm still receiving quick feedback from them, I'm getting responses from them on time and quickly and efficiently, and they're answering all my questions via email or maybe phone call, then I can ask them in for an interview. And the reason for this interview is really to get a feel for their personality, to show them around the facility potentially, and to really get to know how they view their role as an instructor. So that's really the goal of the interview. And sometimes I have instructors who ask me, am I going to be auditioning in this first interview? And I can't help but be surprised by that, because an audition is so much work to plan for and to prepare for. I do an audition not only with myself, a practical audition, but also I invite my team, and I'm not going to do that if I don't feel like it's not going to be a waste of their time. So it's a lot of work to plan an audition. So I want to make sure that it's worth it before I do so. And there's so much you can learn in the interview that can really make or break whether you hire that person. And here are some ways to find that out. Here are the questions I tend to ask when an instructor is with me for their initial interview. First, I want you to understand that it's your job to really try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So when you pick them up at the front lobby, you greet them with a huge smile. You are so excited to see them and meet them in person and hear their story of why they teach. So approach the introduction in person, that first in-person encounter, as a positive one, and how important that is, because they're going to provide way more in-depth information if you treat them that way from the beginning, rather than approach them really skeptically and really making them feel intimidated in the interview process. You're not going to get the best of somebody if you make them feel that way. So pick them up at the front lobby, take them to your office, sit down in a formal setting that's a private setting for them to answer your interview questions. So the first thing I usually do in the interview is once we sit down, we may small talk for a little bit, and then I will jump into my questions, and I try to make them seem very casual and conversational. So the first question I always ask an instructor is, please tell me why you got into this industry. What piqued your interest? What brought you to teaching classes? And please tell me your story. And depending on the instructor, some of them go as far back as the first time they took a class. Some will go back only as far as their first class that they really found they really loved. But that insight into their history and their why of doing what they do is so incredibly special and insightful as a group fitness manager. You can learn so much about not just their history or experience, but what they see is is so valuable of teaching group fitness. So after I have them tell that story, which may lead to more questions throughout that, I have them explain the what. So first is the why. Why did you get into this? Tell me your story. And then what? Ask them to explain what they believe their role is as a group fitness instructor. At that point, you're going to really start to hear and understand, do they see this role as a career? Do they see this as an important part of the fitness industry? And why do they feel that way? And why has it been so inspiring to them that they have in fact taken the opportunity to become an instructor, done all of the work that entails becoming a group fitness instructor? So what do they believe their role is in teaching? And then how? How do they prepare for a class? So at this point, I ask them to share. Notice that these are never yes or no questions, because that just leaves the door open way too much for them to just say yes or no and not really give you any insight. So open-ended questions, obviously, in an interview are going to be very important. So have them share how they prepare for class, how they create strategies and develop strategies to make the experience the best that they possibly can for their participants. And hopefully you get an answer that's more than just, I make a great playlist, or I really work on making my exercises creative and different. There's so much more to being an instructor and to creating a great experience than the exercises and the music. So what are they spending their time on to make that experience magical for their participants? It should hopefully be more than the exercises and the music. And then explaining their class is what I ask them to do. So after they've shared how they prepare, I ask them to explain what a participant in their class would experience. And at this point, it's a great way to identify how well do they really know the class that they are teaching? How well do they know as a participant, and how intentional they are with their words and how they explain and prepare the participants for what to expect. So I ask them, tell me what the class is like, and hopefully they can give me a really descriptive, in detail kind of recap of what exactly it's like in their class. So from the beginning, they have started the music before people come in the room. They hopefully explain that they are introducing themselves to the various participants in the room. They hopefully explain that they start with a nice, well-rounded warm-up. They would hopefully explain that they provide the information of what the participants need to expect for class that day, so that they're 100% prepared for what to embark in on this adventure with them. And then how they create a great experience for all levels, how they cool down the participants, and then how they end the class. That's what we're looking for as managers, is really how they create that experience, not necessarily how they put together so many hills in their cycling class, or so many vinyasa flows in their yoga class. We're looking for that experiential difference that the instructor creates. And then after they've explained their class, I tend to ask when. So to give some examples of when something happened. So when participants, have they ever had a participant in their class who may have, it's happened to most of us, maybe they stubbed their toe, or they roll their ankle, or they may not have become completely injured in their class, but there was an incident in their class. How did they handle that? Or if they bring something up, ask them more questions about that. When people arrive late, how do they behave when that person comes in the room? How do they react to that? And those wins and those experiences, asking those questions, really gives you insight into how they respond to things that might come up during class, because we all know that those happen. And then I finally, of course, ask if they have any questions for me. And the interview can take, sometimes with the instructors I'm working on hiring, up to an hour and a half to sometimes even 2 hours, because I'm digging deep and learning about their personality, how they see themselves as an instructor, how they see the actual experience they give. And then I ask them if they have questions for me. And sometimes the questions I get from them are going to have to do with the actual club that they would be working for. A lot of the time too, I'll kind of quiz them on how much information they have gotten out of reviewing the schedule or looking at the classes. So at this point, I might say, do you have any questions for me about the schedule that you looked at on the website or provided them a copy of? So that's kind of your insight on, did they do their homework? Are they reliable in doing those tasks that you may have asked them to do already? And then I do show them around the club. I show them around the facility. I give them a real clear insight to what the studios look like and what the environment is like. And I may, as we walk around, introduce them to people so that they feel welcome and excited and really interested in working there. And then at that point, during that interview, there have been more than one occasion where I have officially decided if I want to audition this person or not. There have been a couple of times where I'm not quite sure. And in that case, I will let them know I'll follow up with them, and I give myself some time to think about it. I am taking some rapid notes during this time as well, during the interview, and I may again try to digest what I learned from that interview and then potentially invite them again. But commonly, I will say I have gone through this interview process and had such a great experience and enjoyed meeting this person and hearing their story and hearing how they believe in themselves as an instructor and what they do. And I'll ask them right then, you know what, let's go ahead and set up a day and time for an audition. I really enjoy your personality and I'm excited to see you teach. So that way you set up the audition, you get ready, and then I'll talk about the audition in our next video. But that is where I will tend to set up the audition. If it isn't quite going well, or the red flags that I'm about to talk to you in the interview are happening, then I wait, I let myself digest what I learned, and then potentially invite them back for an audition if I do decide that it's gonna work out. And again, audition doesn't mean they're going to teach for you forever. It doesn't mean they're actually going to be hired. It's just the second step that should they continue after that interview in the hiring process. Here are my red flags that I highly recommend all group fitness managers look for and pay attention to when they're interviewing instructors. So I gave some examples of some smaller red flags. I guess I could call them yellow flags while you're asking those questions, some of the answers they might give. Red flags are going to be big warning signs that this person may not be the best fit for your team. One would be if they arrive late and they haven't really given you any insight into why they've arrived late. I've had plenty of times where the instructor is calling me half an hour before, some crazy traffic. They're like, I'm right outside, I gave plenty of time. Fluke things do happen, but when someone shows up late for an interview, that's like a big problem. And so hopefully you already knew that, but just in case. If they have their phone out during the interview, if it's on the table, if it's face up, that's even worse. If it rings during the interview, that's a big problem. And I have had that happen before. You may be surprised in hearing that, but it's definitely happened in interviews before. So that is not okay. That's them not respecting your time and showing that they really respect the opportunity to be interviewing with you. So no phones. And then outfit. I don't expect an instructor to show up in like a business suit, but I do expect them to show up well dressed. I don't necessarily want an instructor to show up in what they would teach in. I would love for them to up the game a little bit by wearing something more professional than, let's say, like a hoodie and sweats, or I've had instructors come in pajama bottoms to an interview. So, and you guys leave me some stories in the comments if you've had some of this stuff happen. Not okay. And I think there were stains on them too. I was not impressed with that. So it's not a business job. I understand comfortable clothing is what we live in and work in as instructors, but there's a limit to that amount of comfort that we want to see in an interview. And then finishing on those two kind of homework things that I give instructors before they come in for the interview. If I've asked them to bring the certifications that they have or that they claim to have in their resume, if I ask them to bring copies of those and they don't do that, maybe they weren't able to get them, they maybe have moved and they there may be a reason for that, but there should have been an effort made. So that's something that is it's really a window into the future. This is when they should be the best behaved and most organized, is during that interview process. And if they miss that mark, that's a big red flag to me. And then finally, if you've asked them to look at the schedule or to do any kind of homework, potentially attend a class or watch a virtual class that your instructors have offered so that they can get an idea of how the instructors teach, and they haven't done that, that's another red flag. But ultimately, I hope this interview process is helpful for you as a group fitness manager when it comes to interviewing instructors. I'm hoping in 2021 we get the opportunity to do this a lot more as instructors continue to come back to teaching and get excited about teaching. And again, I cannot emphasize enough how important this process is for not only your ability to lead somebody and to have a great experience leading your team and this person as they come to your team, but also to think about your team themselves and how they want to know that they're a part of a team that you really took time to build and to foster. And the more that they see these great instructors come in that they can work with and they learn from, the better. And so I again hope that's really helpful. I can't wait for next video next Wednesday to share with you all about the audition and that process. And there are a few more steps to this that I'm hoping to go into more detail soon as well. But I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any other feedback or funny stories. And of course, don't say any names. And I hope you also subscribe to this channel. It is on YouTube. I'm broadcasting this to Facebook as well. So if you're catching this on Facebook, jump over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, watch some of the other videos, and I'll see you guys next week.